Wherever you are right now, stop comparing yourself to other people and stop wishing your life to look the way that other people's lives look. Embrace failure. It's a part of life. If you're not failing, that means you're not trying. Failure is not a bad thing. Whatever season you're in right now, it's temporary. This life is but a mist. It goes by so fast. Welcome to Adulting with Joyce Pring. Watch the full video of this episode on my channel, www.youtube.com/JoycePringTV. And if you want to level up your adulting game, check out joycepring.com/collections for my digital products and courses. Hello, you guys, and welcome to another episode of Adulting with Joyce Pring. Trevino. Pero wala si Juancho ngayon, so Joyce Pring lang tayo. I had this idea, okay, so I told my team, you know what, I should recreate the first ever episode of Adulting with Joyce Pring, which was things to stop doing in your 20s. Now, when I released that episode, I was 25. I had just turned 25. And, I was going through a lot of changes and realizations in my life. So, sabi ko, I think it would be perfect to recreate the most watched, the most listened to episode of Adulting with Joyce Pring by far on Spotify. Now that I'm 31, because I guess hindsight always clears things up, right? So I wanted to redo things to stop doing in your 20s now from the perspective of a 31-year-old. Now, to give you a little bit of context, if you just joined us here on Adulting with Joyce Pring, I've been doing this podcast for 6 years now. And I started it when I was 25. I was in the middle of a quarter life crisis of some sort. I had no idea what I was doing with my life. I felt like I achieved a lot, but I also at the same time felt like I didn't achieve anything. I felt lost, but also at the same time found and inspired. I felt all these polarizing experiences and emotions, and I was learning a lot of things. So, I started writing this episode of the things that I stopped doing in my 20s that has really helped me and that was aiding in my growth journey during that time. And now in hindsight, I applaud young Joyce because that was a lot of, actually all glory to God talaga yun. But that was a lot of learning during that time. Pero ngayon, I can say these things that you should stop doing in your 20s as somebody who is done with her 20s. And joyfully so. Now I'm happily married with 2 kids. I am 31 and it's all a lie, guys. You don't turn into an old prune once you turn 30. You're still pretty cute and you can still wear killing outfits like this. Hey. Okay, so let's start. The first thing that you have to stop doing in your 20s, which you are probably doing right now because it's something that I kept on doing when I was in your shoes, is to stop comparing yourself to others. I feel like we hear this all the time, right? Like, wag mo i-compare kasi yung sarili mo sa ibang tao. Pero how can you stop doing that if you're constantly bombarded on social media with photos, videos, life reiterations, and opinions of others that just seem to be so much better than yours? So I'm here to tell you that constantly comparing yourself to others, whether those are people in your reality circle, meaning the people that you see face to face on a day-to-day basis or on a consistent basis, or even people on social media where the filter is always on, is just gonna lead you to discontent. And comparison really is the thief of joy. Once you start comparing yourself to others, the grass is always going to be greener on the other side. I'm not saying always as in that's always the case, but more often than not, ganun yung mararamdaman mo palagi. And this was something that I kept on doing in my 20s. And now that I'm 31, I kind of regret it kasi parang I didn't really enjoy. I mean, I did enjoy, pero hindi ko na-enjoy to the fullest yung 20s ko because I was constantly comparing myself to others. Like, was I cool enough? Was I doing enough in my career? Was I making enough money? All of these things I was constantly anxious about when I could have just ran my own race. And I think that's something that young people need to hear these days. If you are in your 20s right now, laging sinasabi sa akin ni Juancho, let's put our head down and put in the work. Put your head down and put in the work. That for me is a visual representation of I'm not going to start looking left or right. I'm just going to keep looking here and I'm going to keep doing the work. It's a disposition of humility. It's a disposition of discipline to just run my own race and then trust that God has me. Trust that God is in control. Trust that God will be the one to steady my steps. And now that I'm in my 30s, when I look back at my life in my 20s, grabe, I was so blessed pala. Sobrang all of my dreams and aspirations, things that I didn't even think was possible, I was able to do by God's grace. I was able to do all of these amazing things in my 20s. And nung nandun ako during that time, I was too worried about how well I was doing to even fully enjoy the experiences that I was having right now, during that time. So wherever you are right now, stop comparing yourself to other people and stop wishing your life to look the way that other people's lives look. Kasi hindi mo rin alam kung ano yung pinagdadaanan ng mga taong yun. So focus on your own race. The way that you can stop comparing yourself to other people is to limit your social media intake. Don't doom scroll, because once you doom scroll, you're always going to find people who are prettier than you, better in their careers, all of those other things. But if you just count your blessings, stay grateful, and put in the work, I guarantee you'll be able to enjoy your time better. Okay, number 2, stop neglecting your health. I can say this with confidence that by God's grace, hindi ko naman neglect masyado yung health ko in my 20s. But I did make a lot of decisions in my early 20s that I still kind of have to deal with now. So, I mean, it's not a news naman to anybody that I used to smoke. I used to drink a lot when I was in my early 20s, and I stopped. I haven't smoked a cigarette in years. I also have not excessively drank in years. But now that I'm starting my triathlon training, mas mabilis pa rin ako mahapo. And funnily enough, my coach asked me a question that I didn't even realize was still on the table, which was, smoker ka ba before? It's like, yeah, maybe 7 years ago. Sabi niya, kaya madali ka pa rin hingalin. So even 7 years down the road, the choices that I made when I was in my early 20s is still kind of haunting me now. Now, I'm not saying that to scare you, but to encourage you that as early as you can, make better health decisions. Kasi ngayon, I consider myself as somebody who's very healthy, very strong, very active. I'm not sick. I don't have asthma. I don't have anything that I'm struggling with physically. But meron pa rin mga consequences yung mga pinaggagawa ko nun in my early 20s. So wag mo nang hintayin na magkaroon ng major consequences yung lifestyle mo and health choices mo now that you're in your 20s. I've also realized that when you're in your 20s, parang you kind of have this false notion that you're going to be forever young, because it does feel that way. It does feel like you're going to be forever young, that you're never going to get old, that you're never going to, lose your youth, that you're never going to get sick. But what I've realized is it's better for you to have this perspective na one day I'm going to get old. So as early as possible, I'm going to build habits that will help me not just live longer, but live well. Build muscle, eat more proteins, and eat more vegetables, parang moderate the things that you're consuming, and not just physically, but also mentally, emotionally, intellectually. Ano ba yung mga bagay na pinapasok mo sa katawan mo that you're not moderating well, diba? So whatever books you're reading, whatever food you're eating, all those things, every decision that you make right now in your 20s will eventually affect you in your 30s. Now that I'm in my 30s, because I had the baseline of I did triathlon when I was 24, I did all these mga endurance sports, I did all these mga adventures, I started making healthier decisions unti-unti in my 20s. Now I reap the benefits ang bilis kong maging healthy ulit, ang bilis kong maging fit ulit, ang bilis kong maging strong ulit, even after I gave birth to 2 kids, because I already had that baseline foundation of healthier choices that I made in my 20s. So start as early as possible and find people that you can journey with in that fitness and health journey. Because I guarantee you, if you have friends who are more fit, who are more healthy, who are stronger, most likely magiging ganun ka rin kasi may influence ka nila. So, find those people already. I'm not saying this na hindi ka na mag-have fun, hindi ka na gagawa ng anything, like you won't have that donut or you won't have that vacation where you're just, eating whatever you want. But I'm saying that you're building lifelong habits. And when you're in your 20s, that's really when it starts. So, start as early as now. All right, next. Stop saying yes to everything. Wow. I think that's still no, actually, would you agree, Kiara? I've been very, very good at moderating this na, no? Dati kasi, when I was in my 20s, I say yes to everything. And I think to a certain extent, there's a lot of wisdom in that. Say yes to all the experiences and opportunities that you can with boundary. So, even if it doesn't make you a lot of money, even if it's not like the greatest adventure of your life, even if it's not the most logical decision, obviously we don't want immoral decisions, right? Bad decisions. But spontaneous trips, spontaneous vacations, spontaneous out-of-town trips because you wanted to volunteer. All of these other things. I think there's merit in doing all those things. But you have to set the boundary. What is the boundary? One, is it getting in the way of your priorities already? So yes ka ng yes, okay lang naman yun. Pero if it's getting in the way of you getting proper rest, of you, fostering your relationship with God and with your family and with the people that you love, if it's getting in the way of you performing excellently at work, then probably you have to reconsider these things, right? I'm all for being a yes person because being a yes person means that but for me, being a yes person means that you are thoughtfully considering things and the disposition is always yes, but, yes, but, yes, but, is this going to draw me closer to God? Yes, but, is this going to make me the kind of person, is this going to bring me closer to becoming the kind of person that I want to be in the next 5 or 10 years? Yes, but, is this the place where I want to grow and learn from right now? So, saying yes to everything, obviously not a good thing, but saying yes mindfully and intentionally is where you want to go. Say yes, but also set boundaries so that you're not exhausted, you're not fully just, putting yourself out there and exhausting yourself with rash decisions. Okay, next. Stop fearing failure. I was listening to this podcast recently kay Andrew Huberman and Adam Grant. And Adam Grant was saying that every year he makes it a point that he does a new project that would allow him to make mistakes or would allow him a bit of space for failure. So he doesn't obviously do the project to fail. Rather, he does it with the risk of failure and understanding that that kind of risk is something that he welcomes in his life. And the point that he was trying to make was, if you don't allow yourself that space for the risk of failure, then you won't have any room to grow. And I think right now in a society, culture, and time where the only thing that's really positively recognized are your successes, the highlights of your life, the good things that are happening to you. And then anytime you make a mistake, it's so magnified. Anytime that you make a slip up, it's so magnified. Everybody has this gnawing fear that follows them all around, that they feel they can't make decisions anymore. Kasi pag nagkamali ako, patay na. 'Di ba? Cancelled ka na, or wala ka ng opportunities, or that will be your branding forever. You're a failure. Pero yung sinasabi ni Adam Grant and yung point niya, yun nga, if you don't fail, it means you're not trying enough. And in your 20s, I want to tell you that maybe it's really the time for you to make mistakes. I'm not saying go and make bad decisions intentionally or go make mistakes intentionally. What I'm trying to say is make space for yourself to make decisions that could fail, to make investments that could fail, to make business moves that could fail, because well, medyo low risk pa yan eh. Low risk pa yung 20s mo talaga. Lalo na kung wala ka pa namang pamilya, wala kang binubuhay, di ba? Wala ka pang malalaking responsibilities. Because now that I'm in my 30s, I have a lot of responsibilities. Like, in my 20s, I made so many investments that failed. From restaurants to all these other things. And na-realize ko lang ngayon na buti na lang ginawa ko na yung mga bagay na yon during that time. Kasi ngayon, nakuha ko na yung mga lessons that I had to learn from there. So that was also the time that I studied abroad. I traveled by myself. I actively put myself in situations where I was a rookie, I was a noob, and I was probably the stupidest person in the room. Because if you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. You should be in a room where there are people who are 10 times smarter than you, 10 times more experienced than you, 10 times more successful than you. You should embrace failure, especially at this point in your life. Now, I'm in my 30s. Of course, I still have a lot of failures. I still make a lot of mistakes. Pero ang dami ko ng wisdom na nag-gain by God's grace dun sa mga failures that I got from my 20s. And that could not have happened if I stayed in my comfort zone and if I stayed doing the same things over and over again that kept me in my comfort zone. So embrace failure. It's a part of life. If you're not failing, that means you're not trying. If you are not failing, that means you're not learning anything. So failure is not a bad thing. There's no such thing as failure. There's only not trying. All right. Fifth, stop spending recklessly. Hindi naman ako ever naging reckless spender. Actually, I was having this conversation with myself recently. I said, do I regret that most of my income, hindi naman most, siguro 30% of my income when I was in my 20s went into traveling? Not at all. Because I did an IG story recently of all of the major cities that I've been to. Halos lahat doon napuntahan ko na. Yun pala yun, no? Para lang ma-Instagram ko siya. Hindi. I always think that money could be invested even in the things that some people might say are reckless. Like a lot of people, when I was in my 20s, were saying na, travel ka ng travel, bakit hindi mo i-save yan? Travel ka nag-travel, bakit hindi mo i-invest yan? First of all, smart naman ako nun sa pera ko. So, ang ginawa ko nun, nag-invest na, yung priorities ko were in check. So I did save quite a bit. I did invest quite a bit. But I was also generously enjoying the fruits of my labor. And that was something that Wansha and I talked about recently. Sabi ko, I'm so grateful because my dad my dad and I used to have a lot of conversations, and my brother during that time, magastos talaga siya. So parang akala ko, reckless spender tong taong to. Tapos sabi sa akin ng dad ko, alam mo, he's just enjoying the fruits of his labor. And that's biblical. That's a good thing. Sabi niya, if you know your priorities, meaning nakapag-invest ka naman, nakapagtabi ka naman, bago ka mag-spend, it's good to spend money. You keep saving and saving that, you're not enjoying the fruits of your labor, girl, mabu-burn out ka. So, what I'm trying to say is, learn to properly spend your money. Don't spend recklessly na parang hindi mo alam yung priorities mo. Diba? Travel ka ng travel, hindi pa pala bayad yung kuryente nyo. Travel ka ng travel, puro utong na yung credit card mo. Travel ka ng travel, kailangan mo palang magtabi para sa medicine mo or medicine ng magulang mo or something like that. What I'm trying to say is, know your priorities. Spend according to your priorities, but at the same time, enjoy the fruits of your labor. Because being on a constant anxiety loop of, I can only live off of this when you can live off of so much more. And I know this is coming from a privileged standpoint. It's just not going to bring you joy. So in whatever way you can, whatever enjoying the fruits of your labor could look like, do that. Even if that means just spending for coffee. buying a cup of coffee that you enjoy that makes your day. Or going to a restaurant that's not super expensive pero masarap kumain sa labas minsan with your friends, 'di ba? Or manood ng sine. Kahit ganong kasimpleng bagay lang, allow yourself to do that. But make sure that you know that you've spent and you've prioritized the way that you've spent your money according to your priorities. Okay, nandito na tayo sa number 6. Stop holding on to toxic, negative, draining, hindi nakakatulong sa growth mo relationships. For the sake of, tagal ko na kasi siyang friend. For the sake of, 6 years na kaming nagde-date eh. Or for the sake of, ang tagal ko na kasi sa kumpanya na to. What I'm not trying to say. I'm not trying to say to immediately cut people off. That's not biblical either. What I am trying to say is you have to be more mindful of the kind of people that you surround yourself with in your 20s. Because those people are the kind of people that you will eventually become in your 30s. Yang mga tao na yan, kung tama yung mga tao na yan, which by God's grace, I have the right kind of people. I had the right kind of people. I stuck with the right kind of people in my 20s. Now, sila yung mga ninang at ninong ng mga anak ko. If you are in the right crowd, these people will grow with you. They will speak life to you. They will challenge you to be better people. They will be your cheerleaders. They will be your family, your chosen family. The good people that you spend your time with, those are the good people that will be your village one day. But if you are holding on to toxic relationships just because they're familiar, that cycle of toxicity, that cycle of negative experiences will never end. Kasi you have to learn to set your boundaries. And this was a really hard lesson that I learned at the tail end of my 20s. Now, I'll share with you something that I went through. My husband and I went through. Wansha and I went through. At the tail end of my 20s, I got married 26, right? Got married 26. And 27, 28, 29 was very tumultuous for me because I had this person in my life who I've always had. And this person has always been toxic. This person has brought me hell here on earth, as in so much pain and suffering because of the way that this person was. And I was trying to hold on so much to this relationship because that's what you're supposed to do, right? Like if you love someone, hold on to them. Kasi yan ang pagmamahal. But the hard lesson that I learned was, first, if I kept cushioning this person because that's what I was doing. I was cushioning this person's fall all the time, trying to protect this person. My husband told me, what makes you think that you're doing the Lord's work? When baka kaya hindi niya matutunan yung lesson na kailangan niya matutunan kasi andyan ka palagi para saluhin siya. That opened my eyes so much. Like, oo nga, no? Meron pala dapat konting space and boundary. Kasi pinipigilan ko yung consequences na ma-experience niya dahil ayoko siyang masaktan. Akala ko love yun. Apparently, hindi pala. Pangalawa, it was already wreaking havoc in my marriage. And that's when I knew that this person was really not good. That I was only holding on to this toxic person dahil I wanted it to work and I love this person so very much. But at the same time, hindi na siya nakakatulong sa akin, sa pamilya ko, at sa asawa ko. So I made that tough decision. And I cut this person off for a few months. Didn't talk to this person for a few months. While figuring out ano ba yung boundary na pwede kong gawin to still minister, to love, and to care for this person while at the same time setting a boundary. And after nung period na yon, I reconciled with this person. Never siyang nag-sorry. Never siyang nag-make ng way to reconcile with me. Ako pa rin yung gumawa ng paraan. And I'm not saying that to boast. I'm saying na if you want to build mature relationships with people that you care for, you love, and you want to minister to, and they've hurt you, you cannot expect them to want to reconcile with you. Because sometimes those are the kind of toxic people that we have in our lives. But cutting off people is just not biblical. It's just not. But setting boundaries, keeping a distance, that could be. If you're still pointing them to Jesus, if you're still pointing them to the gospel, while at the same time protecting the priority that God has given you, and in my case, it was my husband and my family, then I know that that is still faithful obedience to the Lord. So when I say stop keeping those toxic relationships, I mean it that way. Learn to set boundaries. Learn to minister to them from afar. Learn to pray for them. And learn to trust that God is in control. Because sometimes the reason why we hold on to toxic relationships is because we think, I'll never find a person like this again, I'll never find a relationship like this again, or kailangan na kailangan ko ng taong to. That's a messianic feeling that we have. When in reality, it is Jesus who they need. It is Jesus who we should be pointing them to. And God has given us His guidance also on the priorities that we should be having. Oh, this is the last one. Stop waiting for the perfect moment, or stop waiting for your life to be perfect. This is a grim statement, but it gave me so much peace. The statement is, to live is to suffer. And now that I'm in my 30s, I've gone through my 20s. The first half of my 20s was pretty dark. I mean, there were a lot of things that I'm grateful for, but a lot of confusion, a lot of lostness, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of just consequences for my sinful life. And then the tail end of my 20s was pretty blessed because I obeyed na. I followed God's guidance. I followed God's calling in my life. And what I've realized is whether in bad season or good season, to live really is to suffer. To live is to constantly be in a state of knowing that at some point there will be pain, at some point there will be trials, at some point there will be suffering. And if you're really walking closely with Jesus, you're always gonna go through difficulty. Kasi laging nire-reveal sa'yo ng Holy Spirit yung mga bagay na hindi pa Christ-like. So, mahirap siya. Lagi kang like every day may struggle ako. May struggle ako with patience, may struggle ako with gentleness every single day. So, I'm here to tell you that you have to stop waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for the perfect life, waiting for the perfect person, waiting for the perfect thing, because there is no such thing. The only perfect thing is God and Jesus and the eternal life that we have with Him when we are reconciled to Him. But that will not happen on this side of glory. That is just a fact. Does that mean that life is grim and sad and morose and forever just a long story of heartbreak? Of course not. But that just gives us an idea that you have to expect the heartbreak, and then you have to be grateful for the beautiful, joyful seasons that you get to experience. I think when I realized that to live is to suffer, to live is to experience the polarizing emotions of both joy and grief, most of the time, mas naging peaceful yung buhay ko. Kasi na-realize ko na wala palang bliss, no? Apart from God. Walang bliss talaga dito sa side ng mundong to. Nung single ako, problema ko, magiging alone ba ako forever? Nung may asawa na ako, ang hirap naman magka-asawa. Nung nabuntis ako, nung may asawa na ako, gusto ko magka-baby. Nung nagka-baby ako, takot na takot ako nung buntis ako. Nung nanganak naman ako, takot na takot ako kung tama ba itong mga ginagawa ko as a mom. Like, it never, ever, ever, ever ends. The perfect moment or the perfect time in your life will never come. So the only thing that you can really do is to joyfully, humbly, and deeply be grateful for the good things in your life. And even for the challenging things, because it will always be there. It means that I'm going to take life in seasons. There are seasons where it's just steaming with beautiful things. It's just steaming with blessings and the most amazing, spectacular, wonderful gifts of God. But then there are also seasons of heartbreak and pain and the desert where you're just holding on to God saying, Lord, get me through this. And I'm not saying this to minimize anybody's experience that, of that difficulty, of that sadness. I'm saying that those two things can coexist. And the moment that we realize that, the moment that we accept that we are finite human beings who will constantly long for our infinite good Father until He welcomes us home, the more that we'll find peace. So I hope you find that peace. I hope that you realize that whatever season you're in right now, it's temporary. This life is but a mist. It goes by so fast. So instead of waiting for that perfect moment, keep your eyes on our perfect Father. Be grateful for the good things that you have and that you enjoy. Be grateful for the people in your life. Relationships are the most important thing in your life. And then also take all of the difficulties and the challenges with a grain of salt, because they all eventually will pass away. So that's it, you guys, for this episode of Adulting with Joyce Pring. Sana na-encourage kayo at hindi kayo natakot. And I'll see you on the next one. Message me if you've got any other questions or topics that you'd like me to do on the podcast. And we'll see you on the next one. Paalam! That's it for this episode of Adulting with Joyce Pring. If you liked this podcast, please don't forget to use the hashtag Adulting with Joyce Pring and also check out www.joycepring.com for the show notes and tag me on social media with at Joyce Pring. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Paalam!